Good morning, Riverbend. Good morning, Riverbend. I know sometimes it's hard to be loud and obnoxious in the morning, unless you're a 7-year-old girl, which I've got one of those at home. And she's good at helping me remember that no matter what's going on, no matter what I'm going through, that there's sometimes just by being in the moment, you can find this, dare I say, joy that doesn't worry about what's going to happen, isn't thinking about what happened already. And it reminds me that whether you're here in person this morning or you're in your room, I see Barbara on there from Nashville. Hope you and Norm are doing good, Barbara. And wherever we are, we've got this chance to be like a kid. Let go of some of these expectations of what's going to happen or what did happen. And I feel like God really likes that. I feel like He made us to be able to do that. So as we sing this song is a reminder to me that more than my body, more than my home, more than even my family, more than my job, more than what I do, but the very thing that holds me together, the very essence of who I am is part of my Creator, part of the one that's always looking out, part of the one that's takes us to the other side after our life here, the one that shows us how to love unconditionally, the one that shows us how to feel hope in the midst of things that don't feel very hopeful. So let's sing this to Him. Give life God, we ask that you make us aware that you're here in this room, that you reside inside of us, no matter who we are and what we think, how good or bad we've been. We have access to you in more ways than just thinking about it, in more ways than just understanding it. In a real-time, live, loving relationship. Be seated.
Good morning, Riverbend. I'm glad to see everyone here, and I'm glad there's so many streaming online. We welcome you. My name is Chris Hansen. I'm the Director of Operations here at Riverbend Church. I have a few announcements to make this morning. The first of which is that we just finished our 2021 annual report. That's on our website on the giving page. That report is full of great information, and it's interactive as well. You'll find links to videos and our websites. The other information I want to pass along is that we have scheduled our Q&A meeting for the congregation. In this meeting, we cover the budget and the slate of candidates for our committees. That meeting is February 14th at 12:30, just following the Resonate service in the community center. If we're also going to offer streaming this year for that meeting, but if you want to stream this year, we ask that you go online and register for that. We also ask that if you have any questions and you're going to be streaming, that you go ahead and submit those questions ahead of time. The next thing I have to tell you about is that our congregational meeting is going to be held on February 21st at 12:30 in the community center, and that's where we vote on our annual budget and our slate of committee members. The gratitude that we have for you is immense. You guys are so gracious with us. You're so giving to us. The giving that you have for us fuels the ministry that we do here at Riverbend, and we're extremely thankful for that. Today, if you'd like to give, you can give online. You can text to give. If you're in the room, we have boxes on the mezzanine and also at the doors. Please feel free to give whatever way you're called to give. Would you pray with me? Lord, thank you for this day you've given us, the beauty of this day. Thank you for these talented musicians. Thank you for Pastor Dave. Be with us today and keep us safe in all we do. We love you, Lord. Amen.
Well, we got kind of a cool thing happening today. A couple of months ago, I guess, our mutual friend Lisa reached out. Yeah, and is Lisa here? There? Oh, that's what I thought. Said she had this artist she's working with, Cass Haley, and you are going to love his music. He's an amazing guy. Just a couple of things about him. He's coming to play a couple of songs today, and he's got a new record coming out. And, you know, we are in a time with pandemic, and we need more music like Cass's music. He's been on America's Got Talent. It was the real stingy guy that said you sang better than Sting? Was it really that guy? Or was it one of those guys?
It was Piers Morgan.
It was him that said that. Wow. Yeah. So he said, was it Walking on the Moon? Was that? Yeah. He's had a #8 hit on Reggae Billboard album charts. He's on Jimmy Buffett's label. The new record coming out is called All the Right People. And the songs we're going to hear today are from that record, right? But Cass is a little different than your typical musician. You know, he's also a huge family man. He's also a farmer. Do you have pigs?
I do.
So I've got 2 pigs too.
Yeah. I think we've got 6 red wattles right now.
6 red wattles.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to talk about pigs after this. So multi-talented, you've got this, I was looking, you have this podcast, and it's called Big Hope?
Big Hope.
Okay, Big Hope Podcast. And so check that out. Check out his music online. And your drummer here is Reed, and he's going to be singing with you as well. But please give your Riverbend huge support and welcome to Cass Haley.
Thank you, man. Thank you guys so much. Honored to be here. Beautiful, beautiful sanctuary. I was blown away when I walked in. In the summer, this first tune that I'm going to play for you guys was written in the summer of 2019. My family and I were coming out of a 2-year battle with cancer. My wife was diagnosed with a rare form of breast cancer in 2017. And, for us to be 2 years out from it and back on the road traveling together was pretty amazing feeling that we had made it that far, because her diagnosis was pretty rough. It was triple negative, BRCA1. It was like stage 3. And so we felt so happy to be through that part, even though we knew it was still a long journey. And this song was written sort of in the spirit of that, in that summer, traveling together and just realizing that, all we have is now, and that the present moment is where our blessing is, and it's where our healing is, and it's the most important thing is right now. And, you know, so this song is about finding that presence in the moment, whatever you're going through, right in the middle of your tragedy, right in the middle of the best day or the worst day, we need to be present. And this became our sort of family anthem of that summer. And honored to play it for you guys today. It's called Every Road I'm On. Take me down the road that I've been given, burning painted pics of broken dreams. Lately I've been snooping round for meaning, breaking ground to grow the things I need. Sunshine, rain, or storm, it's all the same. Blessings always come rearranged. Sunshine, rain, or storm, it's all the same. Blessings always come rearranged. Yeah, they do. Shopping round the scene for inspiration. Bought a flat top hat that makes me feel alive. I'm facing facts without looking back. I'm gonna roll the dice without thinking twice. The only plan I have is here right now. Sunshine, rain, or storm, it's all the same. Blessings always come rearranged. Sunshine, rain, or storm, it's all the same. Oh, the blessings always come rearranged. Yeah, they do. Here they come. Dum bum 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 bum. Oh yeah, here they come. Oh, I can feel them. Oh, here they come. I said sunshine, rain, or storm, it's all the same. Blessings always come rearranged. Sunshine, rain, or storm, it's all the same. Oh, the blessings always come rearranged. Yeah, they do. Ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. Take me down the road that I've been given. Every road I'm on is my home. Thank you guys so much. So, about a year into our family's cancer journey, you know, before I tell the story, you know, one thing that was amazing about Cassie, my wife's journey, and our journey as a family is that, you know, this tragedy really brought us together in so many different ways. I'd been, you know, for years, I'd been trying to figure out how to do the music thing without sacrificing my time with my family, you know, and I've been trying to merge my worlds. And, you know, Cassie being diagnosed with cancer, had this amazing effect on Cassie where she really felt the need to express herself and to be creative. And so we started writing songs. And, you know, we're already a couple albums into it since it began. And she co-wrote Every Road I'm On. And she also wrote this song about a year into her cancer journey, a good friend of ours got diagnosed, and Cassie was moved to just write her a little verse, and we sat down and worked out the music and sent this message to our friend Kellie. And the next thing you know, we finished the song with our good friend Mr. Reed Grimm, who's here, and we just released this song on Friday. And it's just a message of hope, and it's about our belief that love is eternal, and that we need to, just remind ourselves that that's where it's at. I hope you guys enjoy. Be okay. We'll never go away. This love that we all will be forever like to see you locked out, lost in the fight for the moment. Know that it's about empty, but you're not alone in it. Strengthen our ties with each other, give some thought. Oh, it's been here from the start. You're gonna be okay. We'll never go away. And this love that we all will be forever like to see. You've been breathing, working your way through the clutter, teaching, meaning, holding the hands of another. Share everything you've been given right from the heart. It will never fall apart. Be okay. We'll never go away. This love that we all will be forever like to see you locked out, lost in the fight for the moment. Know that it's right. But you're not alone in it. Strengthen our ties with each other, get some thought. It was been it from the start. Oh, it's been it from the start. Oh, it's been it from the start.
Can you thank Cass Haley again for being here today? That was really good. You know, Riverbend's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. But that was really, really good. But today, I need to make a confession to you. I need to tell you something. It's not easy for me to say out loud. It's difficult for me to kind of say publicly. Hope you'll understand. You see, I have some friends, good friends, people that I admire, people that I respect, people I really like. And these friends are Aggies. Now I know, you're shocked, and I realize how hard it is for you to get your head around that. But because I know where I live. I live in Austin, Texas. We live in the shadow of the burnt orange bovine, and I love living in Austin. And I'm a fan of Austin. I'm even a fan of the little university here in town. And I know it's uncomfortable for you to hear that I have these friends, these kind of friends. And my middle daughter Leah, she has her degree from the University of the Burnt Orange Bovine, and we paid them tens of thousands of dollars to educate her. And I know that many of you have degrees from there, or you work there, you're faculty or staff or administrators, you played sports there. I know our connections to the university are very close. In fact, the parents of Bevo, and not the biological parents, but the folks, John T. and Betty Baker, who have a ranch out in Liberty Hill, they raise Bevos. They raise Longhorns, and Bevo is their cow. And so I know that I'm embedded in the UT culture, and I know the stories. I know the stories about the Aggie who put snow tires on his car and came out the next day to find they had melted. I know the story about the Aggie who bought some water skis, who spent the rest of his life looking for a lake with a hill in it. I know the story about the Aggie who broke his legs raking leaves when he fell out of the tree. I know these stories, and hopefully you know I'm being facetious. But we live in a culture of labels. We live in a culture of stereotypes. We live in a culture that necessarily requires us to think in generalities, because life goes by too fast for us to get into the details. Our relationships are necessarily artificial and superficial, and we know that we have to bring some order to the chaos of the world that we live in, that it's full of mystery and uncertainty. And so it's necessary for us to, in the drive-by of life, to generalize and to categorize and to stereotype. And most of the time, there's no malice in it. It's just helpful for us to organize our world and to say, when this happens, it means that, and these kind of people do these kind of things. And I mean, people label me all the time. They call me reverend or pastor or minister. There's even a guy that calls me padre. And I know I'm more than that. I'm more than that label. And I've spent my whole life trying to contradict that label, that people, those expectations or those generalizations or those stereotypes. But I know there's no malice in it. I also know that we're tired of it. This is not new news. that if you're like I am, you are exhausted from the conversations about language, the conversations about appropriate terminology and the implications of the wrong kind of labels or words, and the assumption that there's a pejorative nature or a malice behind those generalizations that we make just to get a handle on the world that we live in. And so we listen to this, and we look to our leaders, we look to our politicians and our cultural icons and our influencers and our celebrities and our academicians to clarify things for us. But today I want to suggest that we change the formula. That we don't rely on someone else to define that for us, but that we take the responsibility. That we find a better way, us, as individuals, that we find a better way. We don't wait on someone else to show us a better way. We find a better way. And I want to tell you a story. In the coming weeks, I want to share a story with you. And from that story, I want to surface 4 lessons. 4 lessons about a better way. The 4th lesson, the final lesson, is the lesson that says when you find yourself in a tug of war with God, when you're ever in a tug of war with God, the smart money is always on God. The 3rd lesson is the lesson that just because you fall asleep in church doesn't mean you shouldn't go. The 2nd lesson is a formula, and the formula goes like this. Failure is to success as trees are to books. And today, the first lesson that I want to draw out of this story is the lesson that says there is a reason why it's not a good idea to build a 2-story outhouse. There's a reason why, and that reason is what I call the golden warning. And it means exactly what you think it means. See, it's my prayer today. It's my prayer every time we are together that the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart would be pleasing in God's sight. And that God would use his word spoken by his servant, anointed by his Spirit, to today, to show us a better way. The story I want to share with you is a familiar story. It's a story that most of us understand sort of at a child's level. We understand it mythologically. We understand it as a legend. We understand it almost as a cartoon, as something that is imaginary, like a fairy tale, but it is anything but that. We know it as the story of Jonah and the whale. But it's really not a comical story. It's a theological polemic. It is a confrontation with our inner being. It is a challenge. It is an examination of a better way. It is anything but a comical or a cartoonish story. It's a story that took place 3,000 years ago. It took place back in the time when the kings of Israel were ruling the divided kingdom. It takes place during the reign of a king named Jeroboam II. Jeroboam II reigned in Israel from about 793 to about 751 or 2, about 42 years. And he was not a good king. He did bad things, but in his court, there was a prophet, and the prophet inspired the nation to establish its boundaries and to make the land secure. And the prophet that was in the king of Jeroboam II was a prophet named Jonah ben Amittai. Jonah means dove. It's the Hebrew word for dove. Amittai means truth. He was the dove of truth, and he was from a village called Gath Hefer. And the reason that that's important is Gath-Hepher was in the tribal area of the tribe of Zebulun, and it was a sister village to the village of Zarephath. And Zarephath was the home of two of the most influential prophets in the history of Israel, Elijah and Elisha. There are biblical scholars who believe that Jonah was the son of the widow of Zarephath. He had a prophet's pedigree. He had the right resume. He had the opportunity to enter into the halls of power, to speak truth to power. He was a person of influence. He was a person of great notoriety. He was a spiritual badass. He was one of the real influencers among his people. During that time, the nation that was dominating the political and cultural world of the Middle East was the Assyrian Empire. For hundreds of years, the Assyrians ruled with an iron fist. They were a warrior nation. They were a terrorist state. They were brutal in the enforcement of their conquests. In fact, the legend of one of their kings, King Sennacherib, was so intimidating that when a village was about to be overrun by the Assyrians, the entire village, men, women, and children, would take their own lives rather than be taken into captivity by the Assyrians. At this time, the Assyrian Empire was suffering. The archaeologists tell us that during this time, at the late half of the 8th century, there was a massive drought. The Tigris River, where the city of Nineveh was located, almost completely dried up after 10 years with virtually no rain. But even though the Assyrian Empire was on its heels and in decline, they were no one to be trifled with. Their great city, the city of Nineveh, which had stood as the capital of the Assyrian Empire, was still powerful, and they were still a brutal and dangerous people. It was during this time that the story of Jonah is told. If you have a Bible, it'd be great for you to follow along, and I realize we don't carry Bibles anymore, but you carry phones. You can Google Jonah 1. Just go ahead, Google Jonah 1, and when you call it up, the search will probably lead you to Bible Gateway or some Bible research, and just follow along, because I want to tell you the story of the first chapter of the book of Jonah. Because it tells us in this time when the Assyrian Empire was ruling the Middle East, the word of God came to the prophet Jonah ben Amittai. And there was no ambiguity about this. Jonah knew when it was God's word. It wasn't, was that God talking, or was that something that I ate? No, Jonah knew. Jonah was familiar with the voice of God. And the voice of God came to Jonah and said, I want you to go and I want you to preach against the people of Assyria. I want you to go to Nineveh. And I want you to let them know that their wickedness has been noticed by Yahweh God, which is another way of saying judgment is coming. Get ready. Well, the word of God comes to Jonah, and the story unfolds very quickly. We don't know whether there was an hour or a minute or a day or a week in between Jonah hearing the voice of God and Jonah saying, I ain't going. No, find somebody else. I'm out of here. And it says that Jonah decided to flee to the city of Tarshish. Tarshish was on the other side of the Mediterranean Ocean. And to get there, the only way to get there was by boat. So he left his home in Gath-Hepher and went to the coastal city of Joppa. And when he got to Joppa, there just so happened, providentially, to be a Phoenician merchant ship that was sailing to the city of Tarshish. Historians believe that the city of Tarshish was actually the city, the Phoenician trading village of Tartessos, or if you want to remember it, the village of tartar sauce. And it was on the southeastern coast of the Spanish peninsula. And if you put it on a map, you realize that Nineveh was 500 miles to the east, and Tarshish was 2,000 miles in the opposite direction, on the other side of the earth. But this is where Jonah was going. He was fleeing from God. We don't know how long they were out at sea. They may have been out at sea just a day or two. But they were far enough out that when the storm raged and became violent, the sailors on the Phoenician merchant ship began to fear for their lives. They were afraid that the ship would break apart. And it says that the sailors got religious. Now that's quite a storm. If you know some sailors like I've known, when they find God, something serious is going on. And they started crying out to their gods. And the Phoenician people were descendants of the Canaanites. And the Canaanites covered all their bases with like dozens of gods. They had a whole catalog of gods. They had a god of thunder, and they had a god of lightning. They had a god of mountains. They had a god of oceans. They had a god of rain. They had a god for dogs. They had a god for cows. They had a god for fertility. They had a god for infertility. They gave them names like Dagon and Shemash and Asherah and Baal. But they had a god in the Canaanite religion, in this polytheistic religion, that they couldn't identify. It was the god of all the other gods. It's like when there wasn't a god that was handy, there was something going on that you didn't expect. Well, that was the other god, the god they referred to just as God. The Hebrew word for God was El, and they called him El. The unknown God, the God above all other gods, sort of the catch-all God. And they were praying to all of their gods. And the storm raged on, and it got so bad that these merchant sailors began to throw their cargo, their future, their livelihood overboard because their lives were so in peril. As they were throwing the cargo overboard, the captain of the merchant vessel went down into the hold where Jonah was sleeping in a hammock strung between the gunwales at peace with God. Let me just give you a little clue that when the captain, for example, when the pilot in an airplane that you're on comes onto the PA and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for flying with us today. Hopefully your seatbelts are securely fastened because we need you to pray. We need you to pray." You're in trouble if the pilot in your aircraft ever comes on the PA and says that. Well, this is what the captain did. The captain came down and said, "How can you sleep at a time like this? Get up and pray to your God. I don't care who your God is. We need all the help that we can get." During this time, the sailors, after they had jettisoned their cargo, they were finding out who is to blame for this. So they decided to cast lots. It was like they were choosing straws. How this went about, I don't know, but the short straw fell to Jonah. And they all looked at him. And they said, "Who are you? Where are you from? What do you do? What is your people? Why are you here? What's going on? You've got to explain to this because our gods just pointed you out and said, this is your fault." And then Jonah says to them, "I am a Hebrew. And I worship the God of Yahweh, the God we call Yahweh, the God that you think is the God above all other gods. That's my God. The God who made the heavens and the earth and the dry land and the seas. That's the God I worship." And this terrified them. And they're like, "What have you done?" Because apparently when Jonah was getting on the boat, he had told someone that he was running from God. Apparently they said, what is the reason for your journey to Tarshish? And he said, "Oh, I'm just fleeing from God." And he told them about that, and they thought nothing of it until the middle of the storm. And they're like, "You're fleeing from that God, the God above all gods?" And they ask him, "So now what do we do? You got us into this predicament. What do we do so that the sea will go calm?" And Jonah looks at them and says, the first courageous thing in the story: throw me overboard. Because when you throw me into the sea, the storm will pass and the sea will grow calm. I know what I'm talking about. I am a prophet. But the sailors remarkably say, "No, we can't do that." So they try one last thing. They try to row for shore. They try to make for dry land. But the storm grew even wilder than before. And there was no way they were going to make it. So they cry out to Jonah's God. They cry out to the Lord, to Yahweh God. "Yahweh God, don't blame us. Don't hold us accountable for this guy. He's your guy. We didn't ask for him to be here. We were minding our own business, sailing around the Mediterranean, and your guy shows up. So when we throw him into the ocean, don't punish us. Remember, it's not our fault." And then they took him and they threw him overboard. Now, we don't know whether it was in that moment or whether it was after some short period of time, but the storm ended and the sea grew calm. It says that the sailors worshiped, they feared Yahweh. That means they believed in him, and they made vows and sacrifices. And they said, I am going to believe in this God of the Hebrews, this Yahweh God. That is the real God. So what is the lesson of Jonah chapter 1? I mean, the Phoenician sailors got the lesson right away. They understood the lesson. It was obvious to them. It should be obvious to us. The lesson of Jonah chapter 1 is don't piss God off. When God says do this, do that. Don't do the opposite. Don't make God angry. You don't want none of that business. You don't want God angry at you. Don't do it. Because they understood that's how God works. Because they observed the world around them. And the world around them is a world that is based on cause and effect. If something happened, there had to be a reason. It was a quid pro quo world. And we know that that's true. We know it's absolutely true that we live in a world that seeks equilibrium. We live in a world that seeks balance. We live in a world of cause and effect. We live in a world of natural laws. You've heard of the law of gravity? Perhaps you say it like this: what goes up must come down. You know, Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. We understand that we live in a world of laws. And as the universe reflects the character of God, God is a God of laws. And when you break the laws, there are consequences. And the world that we live in is seeking equilibrium. It's seeking balance. It's seeking peace. That's why there's weather. Because you have hot air and cold air, you have dry air and moist air, you have rising air and you have sinking air. That's why we have rain, that's why we have storms, that's why we have tornadoes. The world is kind of groaning, and the tectonic plates that cover the surface of the earth are shifting. That's why we get these terrible earthquakes and seismic events. It's because the earth, the universe, is designed to be in balance. And it's not just a natural law. It's also a supernatural law. It's not just a physical law, it's a metaphysical law. We know what it is. We say it like this: what goes around comes around. We understand the law of cause and effect. The lesson of Jonah was that we live in a world of consequences. And when you violate the law of physics, or the law of the nation, or the law of God, there will be consequences. There has to be. So what did Jonah do? What did Jonah do that made God so angry that he was willing to destroy the lives of the innocent Phoenician sailors? Well, you say, well, Jonah ran from God. He disobeyed God. God said, go to Nineveh, and he went the other way. So no wonder that God was angry at Jonah, but I don't think that's what it was. I think that was only the symptom of what Jonah did wrong. You see, what I believe Jonah did wrong was Jonah built a 2-story outhouse, and he put the Assyrians on the first floor. And God was saying, now it's your turn. Now it's your turn. I will follow the natural law, and that 2-story outhouse where you put the Assyrians, it's now your turn to be on the bottom floor. But why did he do it? I mean, undoubtedly he was afraid. Undoubtedly Jonah was afraid, but what was he afraid of? Was he afraid to preach this message to the Assyrians? Was he afraid that telling them that their wickedness had come up before God was too harsh? No, he's a prophet. That's what prophets do. Prophets, and I have this theory. I have some friends. I know people who have what I call a prophetic personality, not pathetic, prophetic, a prophetic personality. They're people who have kind of a perfect pitch for life. They see life in black and white. They always see not just what is, but what could be. And they want to point it out to you. They want to go, oh, that was good, but it could have been this. Or this is where you're going, but you should go this way. You know people like that? They're annoying. They're a pain because they don't see the world like everybody else. They see the world not as it is, but as it should be. And the great prophets like Martin Luther King point to that. The average everyday prophets just point out what's wrong and annoy the crap out of us. So prophets aren't afraid. Prophets aren't afraid of speaking truth to power. It's what Jonah did. It was his calling. He had the confidence that God was moving in him and that he saw the truth that no one else could see. It wasn't because he was afraid of the Assyrians. It wasn't because he was afraid that the message was too soft or the message was too hard. It certainly wasn't afraid that he might not be popular among the Assyrians. He didn't care. He had traversed in the corridors of power. He had called out kings before. What was Jonah afraid of? Jonah was afraid of the same thing we are. What made Jonah run in the opposite direction of where God wanted him to go was because Jonah was afraid of grace, just like us. You know what it is to be afraid of grace? What it is to be afraid of grace is to understand that in that search for equilibrium, in that law of cause and effect, that there are times when mercy and grace and forgiveness puts their finger on the scale and changes the balance. And we're afraid that the people who deserve, the people who need, the people who require the lesson of the consequences of their action won't get it because grace interrupts it, because grace changes the balance, because grace intrudes on the payback that we think is necessary. This is a hard needle to thread. I think all of us at some point in our life are in a position where we are the responsible one. Whether you're the boss or whether you're the owner or whether you're the manager or the supervisor, whether you're the teacher, whether you're the professor, whether you're the parent. You're in situations where you want to make sure that the people who are responsible to you know that their actions have consequences. And to show them grace, to show them forgiveness, is to interrupt the lesson. And that's especially true when something happens to us and we are wounded and we are hurt and we are victimized. Then we are afraid of grace because grace is going to short circuit the payback that they deserve. And so when someone tells us about their lifestyle or about their politics or about their perspective that we think needs correction, we're afraid of grace that says, it's okay. It's okay. It's not up to me to correct you. It's not up to me to be the agent of that consequence. I'm not in control of that. You know how I know that this is why God was disappointed in Jonah? Because of the words of another prophet. A crazy person named Jesus of Nazareth. When he said, I want you to be a people of grace, and he said it like this. He said, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Pray for those who curse you. Bless those who mistreat you. If someone asks you for something, give it to them. And if someone takes something from you, don't demand it back. He's saying the law of cause and effect can spin the opposite way. That if you bless others, that blessing will return to you. If you start that cause and effect chain to be a cause and effect of grace, you can change the entire world. He put it in one phrase, what we call the golden rule. Luke 6:31, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You realize that there's an unspoken corollary. It is an acknowledgement of the quid pro quo, of the cause and effect world that we live in. What you do to others will be done to you. So why not do blessing to others, do mercy to others, do grace to others? Because what you do unto others will be done unto you. It is the golden warning. Jonah suffered the consequences of his choice. He was thrown off the boat in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. As far as we know, Jonah drowned. Jonah died. The first chapter of Jonah ends in verse 17 where it says that Jonah was in the belly, he was in the intestines, he was in the digestive tract of a great fish for 3 days and 3 nights. There's a lesson in the belly of the fish. That's what we're going to talk about next week. We'll talk about why I think Jonah died there. Because that's where we have to go to be changed. We have to come to the end of ourselves. We have to hit bottom. Do you know where the bottom is? I used to think I knew where the bottom was. A year ago, I thought I knew where the bottom was. I kept finding new bottoms in May and June and July and August. And here we are at a new bottom. But do you know how to find that bottom? Because when we come to the end of ourselves, that's when transformation happens. And that's next week. We'll talk about that next week, what it is to find ourselves in the belly of the great fish. You see, Jonah wound up fleeing from God. Jonah was rebelling against God. And the story that causes him to wind up in the belly of the fish, we think of thanks to an Italian author named Carlo Collodi, who in 1883 wrote a story that was inspired by Jonah and the whale. He called it Pinocchio. Pinocchio is a story of a boy made of wood who was not a very good boy, and he is swallowed by a great fish and transformed not only from wood to human, but also transformed from a bad boy to a good boy. And this was the story that inspired Walt Disney to do what some film critics believe is his greatest work of animation, the story of Pinocchio. And we have a tendency to think of the lesson of Jonah in terms of fable or myth or even a cartoon, but it's anything but. The lesson of the story of Jonah is a reminder why we should not build 2-story outhouses. It is a reminder of the golden warning, because when you put yourself on the first floor or on the second floor, you will eventually find yourself on the first floor. Because when you put someone else there, someone else will easily put you there. We live in a world of labels. I mean, we have labels for things to help us categorize and understand the world that we live in. And those labels, they're not malicious. A lot of times they just help us to understand what is difficult for us to understand, to categorize things that fly by us. I mean, I don't mind being called reverend or pastor or padre or minister, but I know I'm more than that. And I have friends who I call Aggies and Longhorns and Horned Frogs and Red Raiders and even Sooners. I have friends who graduated from Texas A&M University, and they married someone who graduated from Baylor University. The Aggie married the Bear, and they have babies that are baggies. Thank you. That's all I got. That's my best stuff today. That the Aggies and the Bears make baggies, baby baggies. But I don't mind. I don't mind if you label me. It's okay. But I know how I'd like to be labeled. I'd like to have the label that he is a person of grace. In fact, I'd like for that to be our label, that we are a people of grace. And I know how hard it is. I know how risky it is. And I know I don't always want to follow through on it. I don't always want to defend it. But it's the label I want us to embrace. I know how hard it is. This is my confession.
Off my mask machine. Says I'm not worth anything. Take off this mask of pride. Blinds me to your loving eye. Take off this mask of fear. Says there's nowhere out from here. I let May you guys see God in your week, in your day-to-day. May He help us all see past through our labels. You feeling in your family, and the good things, and the bad things. We'll see y'all next week. God bless you. Come the one you're making me. 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 Says I'm not worth anything, and I let go of who I claim to be. Become the one you're making Amen.
You have led